All right, I recorded this the other day with the class, but I didn't like the way the video came out, so I'm gonna do it again by myself. All right, so Christianity is not Avodah Zara or idolatry, according to some opinions. So many of the Tosafists, okay, these are the students and the descendants of Rashi. You know, Rashi is in every Chumash, given his commentary on the Torah. So he's well respected, sometimes even elevated to an unhealthy level. So many of these Tosafists in Christian Europe, living surrounded by a majority Christian society, addressed this halakhic question. Is Christianity considered avodah zarah for non-Jews? Of course, we all agree that it is for Jews. We're not allowed to become Christians. But for non-Jews, should we be demonizing it and be against it by default just because it's Christianity? Tosafists said no. Several of them, notably Rabbeinu Tam and Rav Menachem Meiri, Rabbeinu Tam, obviously respected. Some people wear Rabbeinu Tam tefillin, and others in later province argued that Christianity, while containing theological error, is not considered avodah zarah for Gentiles because Christians believe in the God of Israel and accept the Torah as divine revelation, even if they add beliefs that we reject. They don't make the claim that some guy just wanted to be a cult leader, so he wrote a book and he was charismatic and people bought the story that he was selling. I mean, they accept this as God and as true, even if again they add part B, they came up with a sequel. We reject that, but they're not saying that part A is false. Okay, for non-Jews, belief in a form of shituf, which is like partnership, associating God with something else, was not prohibited under the seven Noahide laws, according to their interpretation. Today, this is not something we can promote. Halachically, it's not allowed. It's a whole other topic. But according to their views, this was not a prohibition. Therefore, a Christian who follows their religion faithfully could still be considered a righteous Gentile, um, a Gentile who's not guilty of violating something that they're not allowed to violate, and they don't have to abandon Christianity because they contrasted this with idolatrous religions like paganism, which were forbidden to Gentiles under the Noahide law. So why does this matter? The Tosafists saw Christianity as a legitimate path for non-Jews, not because it was ideal, but because it wasn't in violation of their minimum halakhic obligations. Ideally, what people would do is convert to Judaism. They would follow the invitation or accept the invitation that they've been given in Torah to enter into a covenant with Hashem and live up to a standard that's pleasing to them. That's the ideal. So if they're not going to do that, then the Tosafists would allow them to remain Christians. That's very different from the modern Noahide movement, which is a sales pitch, which is really just a scam that we see today. I've dedicated many hours to why that is, but in short, what this scam does discourages conversion, which is how most people hear about it. When they come to convert, people say, no, you don't want to do what's ideal. You want to follow this other path that you've never heard of before. I know you left Christianity and you came to the conclusion that the Torah is true, and that's the covenant that you want to enter. But we don't want you to do that. We want you to do something instead. We want you to become a Noahide. And then usually the potential convert to Judaism says, I've never heard of a Noahide. What is that? And that's when they hear this sales pitch about what the rabbi wants them to do instead. So the sales pitch or the scam promotes a version of Noahide identity as a second class religion, not something that is ideal and not something that the potential converts came to be a part of to begin with. This is a big reason why it's a scam. And sometimes it deters sincere seekers from Judaism entirely. That's what it was designed to do, prevent Gentiles from converting. So, in the Tosafist worldview, a non Jew sincerely seeking God was better off staying in a monotheistic faith rather than being left with nothing. So, if this Christian was already following the Ten Commandments, why would we want to burn that down and then try and sell something that has even less commandments than that? We're going to tell these people who already believe that's one of the Ten Commandments that they are bound by to honor their mother and father. We're going to tell them now that's overkill. You don't need to do that anymore. You can stop doing that. How does this make sense? You know, a Christian following the ethical commandments believes that adultery is wrong. But under this Noahide scam, a person would be allowed to cheat on his wife with his wife's sister and then lie to his wife about the affair, and he would not be guilty of violating any of the Noahide laws. Anybody that you bring that up to and you ask them, is this an ideal state? Is this the kind of thing that you want to, is this the kind of system you want to push on people and then convince them that they're good people? Every Jew I've ever brought this up to says, no, of course not. They have to follow more than seven to be considered a decent person. All right. Well, then why would you want to get them to leave a religion that frowns upon that and then push them into one where even you yourself can't even admit that this would be considered a good person? So it makes no sense. So oftentimes what you see today is us burning down someone else's house. We're destroying the religion that they currently believe in and then not inviting them to our religion, which they don't need an invitation from us to join anyway. They have access to the Torah. They understand the covenant that God offered us. They believe the Torah is true. So they know they have a place entering this. Um, and they should not be scammed into anything less. Okay, now on Islam, we know Rambam speaks more highly of Islam than he does Christianity. He likes that Islam is a monotheist religion. For Rambam, he didn't view it as problematic that Muslims um, were misguided into following the Quran instead of the Torah. Muslims, for sure, are not Trinitarians, and Rambam liked that. So much so that, according to Rambam, we would be permitted to daven in a mosque because we would not see any idolatrous images of, no statues or paintings of Mary, no wine being used for libations in a mosque. But it's been pointed out that when Rambam talks about Christianity, he's essentially talking about Catholicism because he lived before the Reformation. So if Rambam was alive today and he saw a Protestant church with none of these idolatrous practices present, would he view that the same way he viewed a mosque? Potentially he would. Although I don't think we need to get into hypotheticals because when the Tosafists are speaking about Christianity, they are speaking about Roman Catholicism in France. So they obviously disagreed with Rambam. Although Rambam did have positive things to say about Christians. He says they have redeemable qualities. They are doing the job that we are currently failing at, which is spreading the awareness to the world of the concept of waiting for Mashiach. Obviously, we disagree with Christians about who that's going to be, but the world is now becoming more aware of this concept due to what Christians are doing. He also said we can greet them being Christians, on their holidays. He would not approve of people behaving the way many Jews do today when somebody says Merry Christmas to us instead of Happy Holidays. That's them greeting us, oftentimes not even knowing that we're Jewish. Many of us are undercover, we're not visibly Jewish. We have a hat on over our kippah. And some people wouldn't even know that a person is Jewish, even if they were visibly Jewish. Anyway, he permits us greeting them on their holidays. For sure, he would not want us causing a scene when they greet us on one of their holidays. So on Islam, the Tosafists agreed with Rambam that Islam is strictly monotheistic and are not idolatrous. They comment that Muslims are not idol worshippers, and they treat Muslims like Gary Toshav, like righteous Gentiles that are not guilty of violating anything that Gentiles are not allowed to violate. Obviously, they disagreed with them on Christianity. Rambam says because of the Trinity and because of the belief that the Torah was done away with, he does consider this a system that Gentiles should not follow, according to Rambam. Tosafists disagree there. They permitted actions like commerce and asking Christians to swear an oath invoking only God on the basis that non-Jews are not strictly forbidden shitut the same way Jews are. Meaning we can't attribute, God becoming a human, even though if you read the Peshat, there are parts in Torah where it does seem like he did that. It was Rambam's view that this only happened in a vision, like in a dream. Although this is a view that Rambam had to tell us later on. That's not stated in Torah. Torah doesn't say that these instances were done in a vision. So imagine the Tosafists, you know, a person's word up until recently meant a lot. Even when I was a kid, there was westerns on TV where if you said this person's word is no good, they would be willing to duel to the death. Would be willing to get in a gunfight over just insinuating that my word is not any good. So imagine entering into contracts, verbal contracts, allowing a Christian to swear an oath to the God that they believed in. As long as you're not invoking JC or a Trinity, the Tosafists would allow that. So obviously we don't see a lot of examples of this today, but imagine how that would play out. If a church in your town wanted to get together with you for some type of interfaith thing, whether it was because they want to stand in solidarity with you on Holocaust Remembrance Day, or because they're Christian Zionists and they want to show solidarity with you because of war that's happening now, or if they just want to be good neighbors, take a secular holiday like Thanksgiving, as long as everything's kosher. Um, Whatever the case may be, they just want to build a friendship, have a neighborhood yard sale where everybody can get together. We're talking about two religious groups. Of course, there's going to be a prayer. As long as the Christian was leading a prayer, if they're not invoking, in the name of JC or whatever, if they're just saying a prayer to the God of Israel that they believe, that we believe, gave us the Torah at Mount Sinai. Could we be there and do that? For sure, I think the Tosafists would allow it. I'm not saying you have to seek this type of relationship out um, with churches in your neighborhood. However, um, I don't think we should be demonizing other religions like this, especially if you're living in a country where the majority of religious people are Christians. I think at a minimum, we need to not be on the attack. This is different if they're attacking you, defending the Torah and our religion. Of course, we have to be prepared to do that. But we do not need to be the aggressors. And I think the lesson from this is if they're not going to convert to Judaism, which I think would be the ideal thing to do, then we should recognize they are better staying where they are rather than burning down their religion and then offering them nowhere to go. So I think that's something to consider. And especially when right now the world is paying attention to us and how we behave. 20 years in synagogues, I've never heard anything negative about Christianity in the synagogues. The only thing I've ever heard was that, in Judaism, we don't need an intermediary, which is just true. We have a direct line to God. We can pray directly to God. So I wouldn't say this is attacking Christianity. It's just pointing out one difference between the two religions. Islam is the same way. They don't have an intermediary. My understanding is that they pray directly to God. They don't end their prayers within the name of. And Islam, like us, doesn't believe in the Trinity, but I don't hear them demonizing the New Testament the way I see Jews doing it. And to be clear, I do not see Jews doing that in synagogues. But when you leave the synagogue and you go online, you see a lot of Jews saying very negative things about Christianity. Islam doesn't believe that he was the son of God, but they'll say peace be among him, um, just to show respect for the individual. Something that a lot of Jews online are lacking. And then we lash out about anti-Semites, about how they hate us. Well, how many of us actually look at our behavior and say, okay, is there any reason that some of them don't like us? There's always going to be some that don't like us just because we're Jews. Okay, that's probably never going to go away. But is there some percentage that we can make go away? Can we remove some ammo that they're using against us? And when they're taking screenshots of things that we're saying, it's either one of two things. Either they're creating fake accounts and pretending to be Jews and saying bad things in order to give people reasons to not like us, or they're taking screenshots of what some of us are actually saying. And maybe it's a little bit of both. But I know me personally, when I've spoke up and I've asked people to just consider some of the things that they've said. How is the world supposed to look at us? There's a real lack in some of our communities online. Again, this doesn't happen in synagogues, but online, there's a real lack of willingness to to look at our own actions and say, you know what? Maybe I should think about what the world's gonna say when they see this. We don't allow anybody else to just say offensive things and and not have to face criticism. But then for some reason we think that same courtesy should not be extended to us. So I would just say let's just consider our own actions and have some moderation. and respect for other people's religions. We want people to respect our religion. In a place like America where we have freedom of religion, that applies to everybody, not just us.